Harvey was different because it challenged us in every way possible. Our major facilities in the storm-impacted areas were essentially isolated because of floodwaters. Coast Guard men and women across our service and at every level displayed remarkable initiative and innovation, overcoming many, many obstacles.
We were able to get in that morning prior to sunrise, and due to the low ceilings, we were having to fly at times as low as 100 feet, flying in between light poles on highways, flying over power lines.
The day always started pretty early. We would have our morning meetings to figure out what we're going to do that day, where we're going to try to get to.
United States Coast Guard, anyone out here?
And then we were out on the water the rest of the day, wading through water that was chest high. And we stayed out till 7, 8 o'clock at night, dry off, and go to bed for the night to get up and do it again the next day.
This was a high-risk operation. They were saving lives in the middle of tropical storm force winds and torrential downpours.
Our main mission was to protect the asset. We left the pier and anchored out in the Houston Ship Channel, dropping both of our anchors and two 12,000-pound sinkers over each side of the buoy port on our ship.
We were taking upwards of 1,000 calls per hour. There were more than 26,000 calls received.
What we would end up doing is going out, picking up as many folks as we could until, by policy, they were no longer allowed to even keep flying. So people were really pushing their limits. One thing I'll never forget is looking back in between hoists and seeing young children as young, sometimes as 5 or 6 years old, or even babies, getting hoisted up in baskets, and looking back and see our flight mechanics and rescue swimmers taking care of them and comforting them when they were in a really terrifying situation.
More than 100 Coast Guard families lost their homes to the floodwaters or to the winds, but every one of those responders there had their family back home and operated through the uncertainty. It's an amazing sacrifice for our crews to be fully engaged in a rescue operation even while they're wondering about their families back home.
I was born and raised in South Texas, so I'm not far from home. And while the other buoy tenders coming from D8 and D7 that came in to help us worked on our aids navigation, that gave us time to check in with our families and our houses to make sure everything was okay. So it was definitely something that I'm not going to forget about.
There was a young mother who had attempted to drive away from her flooded neighborhood, but became trapped in her car and had to climb on top of her car with her baby. We were able to launch an asset out there to go get her. So that one has stayed with me and will stay with me forever.
Our shallow water rescue craft assisted or saved close to 10,000 people. But when you think about the number of rescues that they directed, our junior petty officers in these boats would move into a flooded neighborhood, and because the boat said U.S. Coast Guard on the side, they were in charge. Local responders, state responders, Cajun Navy responders would come to our people and say, tell us what to do. Our petty officers would establish search grids, they would establish landing zones, and they would lead teams into flooded neighborhoods. And in that way, those junior Coast Guards, men and women, directed the rescue of probably 50 or 60,000 individuals.
The reason I joined the Coast Guard was to help people. And it just made me really proud to be a member of a service that goes out to help people first. And that is our highest priority.
We're talking about the Coast Guard heroes of Harvey, and there are many of them, and they're across our organization. They include our active duty, our reservists, our auxiliaries, our civilian employees. But there is the Coast Guard Foundation that helps the heroes, and I will tell you the foundation was in my office in New Orleans even while the storm raged in Houston, asking how they can assist Coast Guard families impacted by this storm. That provides peace of mind that allows our Coast Guard crews to do the work that they do.